Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about Silver Nemesis, the Omnibus version, which of course is on the Season 25 box set, and is done in the spirit and style of the Omnibus stories we got back in the 70s. And I have to say, I actually really enjoyed the Omnibus cut, which oftentimes I don't, because oftentimes, usually when I'm watching an Omnibus version, I can spot what's been cut. It's a lot harder for me in extended versions to notice what's been added. In Omnibus versions, a lot of times I can notice what's been cut. It's the reasons why I find the Omnibus cut of, especially say, the Ark in Space and Day of the Daleks harder to watch, because I notice the stuff that's cut, and it's usually important stuff that's cut, entire subplots or speeches, and I find that very bothersome. Whereas here, I was obviously noticing what was cut, especially having watched the special edition recently. But the stuff being cut is stuff that it doesn't hurt the story to be cut, for the most part. There's one little bit, and it actually tightens up the flow of the story and just lets the story get on with it, which I like. This omnibus cut's around 53.5 minutes, something like that. And the story flows really well, because a lot of the stuff being cut is more just filler anyway. Like in episode 1, when the Doctor and Ace see the Queen with the dogs going by. They've cut that out. Doesn't need to be there. Also, the kind of establishing shots of the crowd touring around. They cut most of that out. There's one little shot of the crowd. Other than that, they pretty much cut all that out, which is also fine. Doesn't really need to be there. It being there doesn't hurt the story, but it doesn't need to be there. Another thing that is cut is the lady Pinafore, or whatever her name is, and the guy with her, Richard, hitching a ride. How they do the hitchhiking thing where they try to pick up a car, and finally the American Southern lady picks her up and talks about, my family was from here. That part's all cut out, which doesn't need to be there. I said in my reviews for Silver Nemesis before that I've done that's just doesn't need to be there. There's no reason for that to be there. Now, I don't mind that scene being there because it's hilarious. That scene is so funny when she's like, all things will be mine. And the Southern lady's just like, you're right, dear. I mean, it's a funny scene. It's bonkers, silly funny. So I don't mind that scene just because it's hilarious. But there's no reason for it to be there. I've said before you could cut that whole scene out and the story works just fine. So you get to save a lot of time cutting out not only the part where they're trying to pick up a ride, but once they're actually riding with her in the car. All that's gone. And again, the story doesn't suffer from it because it's just padding. Hilarious padding. I certainly don't mind it being there. But I certainly don't miss it either. So that part's cut. The part where the two neo-German guys, when the one pretends like he's working for the Cybermen and betrays the older one, just to find out he was kind of pulling a double bluff and he was actually still working for the older German guy the whole time. That's been cut, and there's a couple little pieces of dialogue that make that not make sense a little. I mean, not much, and I think if someone was just watching this story for the first time with the Omnibus version, they probably wouldn't catch it. But the fact that the Cybermen don't kill the humans in this edit kind of makes it weird because you figure they'd kill them. And then the bit when the guy says the line about they thought they had bought me, but they don't know we are loyal to the cause, doesn't really quite work. It's a little janky, not enough to be bothersome. It's not something that bothered me. It was more just something I made a note of in the back of my head as I was watching. But they did cut out that whole subplot where the second-in-command guy pretended to turn traitor. They cut that out as well. I do believe they trimmed down the scene when Ace, at the end, is fighting all the Cybermen with the gold pieces. I do believe that's been condensed down. That feels condensed down to me. Which is fine, because I feel like that goes on overly long. I find just that whole bit silly. Her killing them with gold coins. It's just, I always found that silly. So I'm fine with them condensing that down. The bit when she stuns the cyber leader, and as soon as she walks down, he's picking the gold piece up and getting off. I think there's usually, a little more material in there. Like, I think there's a cut between her defeating those 3 Cybermen on the walkway and the cyber leader kind of picking the coin up and getting up. I think he's down for a few seconds, or a minute or two, instead of it cutting straight to him picking it off and getting back up right after she leaves. That those are the main things. It just trims a lot of the stuff that doesn't need to be there and streamlines the story a bit. I mean, it's not like it's cutting a 10-parter down to 90 minutes or anything. It's not cutting out a huge chunk. It's just trimming out the stuff that, for the most part, doesn't need to be there anyway. It's just kind of stuff that's there. Stuff that's not necessarily bad to be there, just like the Doctor seeing the Queen. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not pivotal to the story. And just trimming it down to the main elements the story needs to work. And it has really good pacing because of that. This thing moves at a clip. It stays going, which I like. I never got bored. I never needed a break. I watched the whole thing pretty much the whole way through. I might have paused once for like a minute while I was checking my phone. That might be it. But I didn't have to like stop and take a break and get up and move around. I pretty much just watched it through. I mean, it's a pretty good way to spend most of an hour. Like, again, 53 and a half minutes, something like that, right around there with the runtime. I do hate the fact that just like the special edition, it ends on the Doctor doing that wink instead of the part that I like better, the way it originally ended. I hate the fact that it just has him doing the wink. It does incorporate the updated effects. I was not expecting that. I thought the Omnibus cut would use the original effects. I was not expecting the updated effects. As a matter of fact, at the beginning, I was like, if these are the original effects, they're looking pretty good. And then when I saw the little cyber mats coming in, I was like, oh, okay, yes, they are. This is using the updated effects from the special edition, which are still fine. I prefer the updated effects. But I was surprised. I didn't think the Omnibus cut would be using them. But I had a lot of fun with this. I mean, I've always found Silver Nemesis underrated. I don't think it's as good as Remembrance of the Daleks or the Happiness Patrol, but I enjoy it more than I do Greatest Show in the Galaxy. And this is just a nice, tighter cut of it. I don't necessarily think it's the definitive edition. The interesting thing, though, about Silver Nemesis is I don't have a favorite version of it. I mean, I've never watched the VHS edit before, and I might go through it on here eventually, even though I know it looks like it's just straight taken from the VHS tape, not in the best quality. But I may go through it just for the heck of it at some point. But I enjoy the standard edition. I'm sure I'd enjoy the standard edition with updated effects. I liked the special edition, and I liked the Omnibus cut. I prefer this Omnibus cut more than I do most Omnibus cuts. I can say that. Like the Ark one, I much prefer the original. Day of the Daleks, I much prefer the original. Even the Daemons, I prefer the original version, although that Omnibus cut wasn't bad. Whereas this one, I'd say the Omnibus cut stacks evenly with the other two versions I've seen. I kind of rank them about the same, honestly. And I think that says a lot for someone, again, who's very particular about Omnibus cuts. Same thing with Pyramids of Mars. I enjoyed the Tales of the TARDIS version of Pyramids of Mars, but I still much prefer the original version of it, and that's my go-to version of Pyramids of Mars, is the standard 4-part version of it. Whereas this could be the only Omnibus I can think of off the top of my head where I rank it equally with the special edition and the standard version of it. And so that says a lot for how well they did this cut, and the fact that some of the stuff that was cut, especially the hitchhiking stuff, is stuff that I've said for a long time. You don't even need that there. So it just tightens up the story. So if you want to get through Silver Nemesis and not quite spend as much time on Silver Nemesis, it's a great option. I definitely recommend if you want to see maybe a tighter version of Silver Nemesis, where, like I said, it just moves at a quick pace, which I really like. It never really lets up. And that's a lot of fun for me. I definitely recommend giving it a watch. So I want to know what you think of this version of Silver Nemesis. If you've seen it, comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. I want to give a shout out to a couple of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney and Sam Venning. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons and my YouTube members. A link to my Patreons down in the description. My P.O. box is also down there if there's anything you would like to send me to look at and review. A link to my Amazon wishlist is down there. A link to my Amazon UK wishlist is also down there as well. Most importantly, thank you for watching.